Okay. See if this works better. So we established that Charles is the son of James. He comes in and he persecutes the Puritans, and he's going to force a lot of them to make a decision whether they are willing to stay to help purify. Remember, that was their original reason for wanting to have change in the Anglican Church. They wanted to purify it. But Charles begins to persecute them so much that they now realize that their efforts to purify the church is no longer welcome. So where do they go?
Russia.
Nope.
From William Orange.
Nope. That was the Separatists.
Oh.
Puritans. America.
Jamestown.
No.
Not Jamestown.
No.
Prince Edward.
No. The Puritans go to
Plymouth.
New England, and many of the Puritans end up in Massachusetts. Many of them end up even going into Pennsylvania. One of their goals when they go to the New World is that they wanted to be an example for the rest of the world on how a proper government could be run while still honoring God.
Did
They set up a number of good things in there, yeah.
Aren't they kind of doing the opposite of what they stand for? Because they think you should stay together, but they leave.
Yes, but why did they leave? Persecution, because they were not welcome, and the changes they were trying to make were being met with resistance by the king.
So then how are they, like, what did they believe?
So they wanted to purify the Anglican Church to avoid it looking too much like the Catholic Church. When King Charles comes into play, he wants it to look more like the Catholic Church, and it creates this friction between the two. The Separatists have already left, and they were gone during James's reign, and now the Puritans are beginning to realize the Separatists might be right, that we need to separate like they did. Because everything that they have done over the last few years has seen zero change in the church. So, one of the main leaders in the New World is John Winthrop. John Winthrop establishes a new settlement, and he decides that he is going to set that up with scriptural foundation, and specifically he points them to Jesus. I want to say it's in Matthew, where he talks about that we should be a city set up on a hill. You guys remember that passage? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Okay, ye are the salt of the world. A city that's set up a hill cannot be. I'm confusing those now that I'm actually trying to quote it. But yeah, so he's getting to that. I'm not sure if the salt comes before or after, but either way. City that's set on a hill cannot be hid. So he said we want to be an example to the rest of the world on how to live a godly community and merge that with government. So he tried to do that in the New World and did a fairly good job. There was a lot of the foundations of the New England states that were based in Puritan government. And it was not only John Winthrop, there were a number of others that did that as well. So Charles constantly fought with Parliament. They did not get along well at all. Charles was bent a little bit more toward Catholicism, while Parliament was primarily leaning toward Protestant. But not only that, they also fought about money issues. They also fought about military issues. They fought about taxes. They just did not get along. And so Charles finally decided that he was going to ignore Parliament. That if they did not want to meet his demands and do what he said, then he wouldn't meet with them. And the way that the government worked here was that the king had to call Parliament into session for them to be able to meet. So Charles just said, fine, I'm not going to call you into session. I will rule the kingdom the way I want to. But there was one thing that he overlooked and one thing that he needed from Parliament, and that was money. According to their rules and their laws, Parliament was the only one who was allowed to authorize the spending and use of money. So if King Charles needed money for something, he had to go to Parliament. He had to call them into session. So Justin, if you are a member of Parliament,
Yes, sir.
let's say I'm King Charles, and I've ignored you for the last 6 months.
I want to be Justinator, sir.
You what?
I want to be Sir Justinator.
Sir Justinator. Okay. Sir Justinator, I called you into Parliament today, and I realized that we have not met for the last 6 months, and we have not been here together. So I am asking for you to help me help the country by providing a little bit of extra money for my military.
What art thou needed for?
I am concerned about the citizens' protection. I'm concerned about some issues that are going on in foreign countries that I may need to put a little bit more military involvement there for us to be a stronger nation together.
Is there any hostility we need to worry about
With other nations or between you and me?
with other nations?
There is the potential of that, but I am wanting to go on the offensive.
How much are you asking for?
I'm asking for $2 million.
$2 million? My goodness. You think about this, big fella.
Now, okay, before you give me an answer, if you are actually a member of this parliament, and I've ignored you for 6 months, with the intent of keeping you out of government business,
No.
what is your likelihood of granting my request for money?
Not likely.
Anybody say, yeah, sure, go ahead. I will give you that, okay. Okay, I didn't think so.
Because how are they supposed to make sure that he's using the money for what he says he's going to? Because, I mean, if it were for that purpose, then I'd be like, yeah, sure, even though you're a jerk and you've ignored us for like half the year. But, like, I don't trust him.
You don't trust? Okay, good point.
What's the accountability there? Like, is there any? Or could he just say, hey, I'm using it for the military and then go make the policy resign?
Good point.
I would say like until he could start meeting with them or agreeing on other things.
So, Julie, you're going to put conditions on this money? Anybody else like Julie's idea? A lot of people. What? You guys are
I'm
greedy.
second
What in
for
the
action.
world?
Look, once he gets hold of that money, what makes him?
Sir Justin seconds that action.
There's no
Okay,
accountability.
hold on. Victoria?
Maybe he just bribe them by giving them something.
Oh, that's government corruption.
So
Well, oh, you're not, okay. I thought you were saying, like, give them part of the money. No, okay. What would you propose?
I don't know.
What would you want in return from me in exchange for this money?
Food.
Some people do that in the past.
Parties.
We've talked about kings that have done this.
Okay, now, keep in mind, what is the one power that you as Parliament have?
Money.
You have power over the money. What does the king have power over?
Everything else.
Everything else.
Taxes.
Okay?
We're gonna die.
Is that a fair system?
No.
Yes. No.
Probably not. So, let's say, what are some other things that I as the king would have power over? Give me some examples and ideas here.
Our
I need a
death.
marker first.
Religion.
Excommunication.
Our death. Executed.
Okay, I heard somebody say religion. Okay, what else would I have the power over as king?
Execution. The people.
Religion.
Let's say execution of laws. Okay, which that could include the death penalty, I suppose. What else do I have the power over? Land use. Okay.
Yeah.
How? What,
Maybe.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but how over the people? What do you mean?
Like in the kingdom, they have
Okay, so I have the power to make laws. Let's say it that way.
What's it called? Military.
Okay, military, good. Good. Can you think of anything else? You guys have a good list here.
Trade.
Trade? Yep.
I feel like there's something like really big.
No, I think you guys have done a pretty good job making this list. We could get more detailed, but just off of this list, I've come to ask you for money. What would you like in return?
I would like power.
Execution of laws.
Now you guys have to agree, because I'm not gonna come out and give you everything, because that's just not gonna happen.
Military.
The power to make laws.
You guys want the power to make laws?
Make laws.
Oh,
Because then we can
yeah.
like make laws.
Military. We can like make laws.
No, that aren't good for him, so that he has to rely more on us and he doesn't have to.
Fine, make laws.
If we have the ability to make laws, though, I think we could make a law that says. Wait, if we have the ability to make laws,
He's
we
got
have
no
to
power.
make
He's got no power.
And even if he can right now, he can walk to the others.
What do you guys want to go with making laws?
Yeah.
I think that's what you want to do.
What would you go for?
I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to vote for. I'm the king.
You go for making power.
Now,
As a teacher.
that's not a bad idea. But let me ask you this. If I give you the power to make laws, and you guys make a law, whatever it may be, who's going to enforce that?
King. That's why I said execution of laws, people.
Okay,
Give me a
Now-
pencil and-
But then we only get to enforce laws that already
Yes,
exist, and
right.
that's not gonna help us.
right?
Right.
I still get to make laws.
Give me one.
Yeah. Because then he could be like,
I like them both.
Well, I want one of
We're not
those.
really
Yeah,
doing that
right.
much.
He can take
Or
the
he's
power
gonna
Now-
get rights because he's gonna be able to.
He can
say
take it
yes to
away.
and-
Oh wait, just kidding. We're the execution.
Now, you have done a really good job of thinking of how Parliament was going to think. They were not going to let the king walk in there and just say, hey, I want this, please give it to me. They said, no way, we want something in return. And they had similar debates as what you all just had, much longer, much more intense. But similar debates of, okay, what do we want in exchange for this? Because this is our one shot to wrestle some power away from the king. They end up settling on this one here. It's called the Petition of Right.
What is that?
I'm going to explain it. Okay? Petition of Right says this, that the king could not tax without Parliament's consent. This is the one that they chose. And they could have chosen a lot of other things, but they saw the downside, like I showed you here with making laws, that, well, then they couldn't enforce them. And if you just had the power to execute laws, then it's the king's laws you can execute or enforce. So they said, we want the power to approve all taxes.
Oh.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, that is going to ensure you now already have the power of the purse. You have to approve all spending that I do. If I give you the petition of right, that now gives you what new power?
Petition of power.
Power of the tax.
Power of the
Power
tax.
of the purse. Of the tax.
So you now have total control over both revenue, that's income of money in this country, and spending of money in this country. What does that guarantee I have to do anytime I want to do something finance related?
Tell you.
I gotta come to you.
That is something special, Mr.
That's so
Jones.
smart.
So it was really smart. Yeah, Parliament did a great job here because now what they're doing is they're putting the king in a corner, which they say that we'll give you the money you want today. But in order to do that, you've got to sacrifice a lot in the future. Which means that now we're going to add more of those things. Next time I come to you and I say, I need something else, now you're going to say, okay, let's talk military. Or let's talk laws. Now you have a leverage against the king that Parliament's never had before. So
I
that
didn't think of this before.
the petition of right is extremely important to British history. Because of the fact that it now begins the transfer of power from the king to the Parliament. And today, when we fast forward now, 500 years, who has the most power in England? Parliament. This is where it begins. It begins here with the petition of right. Now,
How long did it take for them to get that total power?
Do you think?
I don't remember.
Do you
I mean,
think
it's a gradual process.
Do you think the king and queen can ever get it back if they tried?
No.
Like ever?
No.
Because they have no leverage. It's
Not-
pretty-
Not unless there was some sort of civil war or a military coup of some sort where they tried to overtake the throne. So somebody else comes in and takes over as a military dictator or something.
And they need to give the king or queen some sort of power that way they can stop it.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking more of a transfer to a new king and queen, to where it goes back to a full monarchy. But I don't see that happening, unless, something major
Alright,
and
I'm gonna do that.
catastrophic happens. Yeah, you want to try that? Good luck.
And I'll leave the heir to my 5 sons.
What are their
Yeah.
names? Bro, you
Now-
ain't even married yet.
Hold on. Let's.
Don't even got a girlfriend.
England's going to break out into civil war.
Uh-oh.
So,
What was his name?
so in reality, they said in the video, Oliver Cromwell was not actually on that list. They did that more for dramatic effect because the movie is called Cromwell. He was a member of Parliament, but he was not necessarily on that list. So some of this is dramatized. Charles did walk into Parliament as that showed. He did have a warrant for the arrest of certain members of Parliament because of their, what he called treasonous speech against the king. Their actions were trying to wrestle power from the king, and so he claimed that as treason. Okay? So he walks in there and he says, hey, I want to arrest these guys. Well, in this video, it showed Cromwell stood up, he sat there and said, anybody who lays hands or tries to arrest a member of Parliament, that is a violation of Parliament procedure and of the king's own laws of the way that they're supposed to work together. The king can't just go in there and arrest somebody that speaks out against him. Okay? So when they realized that, that's where the king said, fine, if I can't arrest you now, then I'm going to disband Parliament, so therefore you're no longer members of Parliament, now I can go arrest you. That's what caused that's part of what caused this to break apart the Civil War. So when we get to this point of civil war, Oliver Cromwell is one of those main guys. But before we get to Cromwell, a couple things in this Civil War area. It's not going to show up on your screen, but you should include a few details here, some of which you saw in the video. So first thing that you need to be aware of here is that the Puritans, which somebody mentioned that in the costuming, the Puritans were opposed to Charles. And so there was a lot of disagreement. So we talked about that here just a moment ago too, where the power over money. Okay, so the Puritans in Parliament, they opposed Charles. So Charles walks in, and what did he do when he walked in there? He walked into Parliament with the intent. Okay, he sat down. He took a position of authority there in the Speaker's chair. What did he have with him when he came in?
Army.
An army. Yeah, he marched in with about 400 men. Well, if you're coming in to discuss something politically, what is going through your mind when you see somebody walk in with military force?
You'll be shook.
Yeah, you might get messed up here if you try to avoid whatever he's trying to do, or if there's any kind of problem, he's not afraid to use military force here. Is that the way that the king is supposed to operate with Parliament?
No.
So he walks in, he marches in with 400 men into Parliament. There are two different groups that you need to be aware of here, represented by the images on the screen. The first one is a roundhead, the smiley face roundhead. The roundheads, this is the group that they called the people who supported Parliament. The roundheads were the group of people that supported Parliament. Then you have the Cavaliers. Yeah, there's the basketball team. Cavaliers supported the king. I know I need to get a LeBron James picture up there, don't I? So Cavaliers supported the king. Those of you that follow basketball, King James, you can put that together if you want to. So the Cavaliers supported the king. Most of the Cavaliers were the nobility and the wealthy class. So this is where England divides itself into two teams, the Roundheads and the Cavaliers.
Is this for more than one reign or
No, this is all during Charles.
all their terms?
Yeah,
Or
this.
they support Charles,
Yeah.
not just the
Yep. Oliver Cromwell. He becomes the leader for the Roundheads.
That's the guy that was like sitting at
Yes, that's the guy that was shown in the video. We're going to see him talk a little bit more here. I got a couple more clips, so I'll show you. But Oliver Cromwell, Cromwell, he becomes the leader of the Roundheads to fight against the Cavaliers and the king. He becomes like the people's champion. And he squares off against the king and his Cavaliers at the Battle of Naseby. Battle of Naseby. Naseby. There's an E in there that throws people off. Naseby. So the Battle of Naseby, Cromwell leads his army against the Cavaliers, and they win. So the Roundheads defeat the Cavaliers. King Charles he loses this battle, which means that he now is accused of what? Treason. Why?
Because he went after those people.
Okay, he went after those people. Who are those people?
Parliament.
Parliament. And what did he do to Parliament when he went after them?
He disbanded.
Disbanded. Was that allowed by the king?
No.
No. Okay, so when he loses this battle, now they can enforce the law, and they can say the king violated the law, therefore the king needs to be removed. Okay? So I want to go back here.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Good. Thank you. Wait, this is I don't want to see something.
No,
Wait, did it always go on the first one? Because I know whenever you like chop somebody's head off, it doesn't like
Yeah.
you have to.
No, not always.
that.
So
So glad that doesn't happen anymore.
So Oliver Cromwell becomes the next natural person to come to power. Now, he was very careful not to claim the title of king. He did not want that, nor did he believe that was his to take. So Oliver Cromwell, you noticed in the video they talked about how the children were taken care of. They actually took the children away for a period of time until things settled down a little bit. Cromwell knew that they were the rightful heirs to the throne, and so the plan was that they would bring the children back to reign over England, but the people were not ready for that yet. So he established a temporary government during this time, and so the very first thing that he did is he goes in and he dissolves Parliament. Well, that sounds like the same thing that Charles did. So how could he get away with doing that and Charles ended up going to civil war? He dissolved Parliament because of the fact that the Parliament was so divided that they could not get anything done. And so in Cromwell's mind, the best way to get past this national crisis, this civil war, was to get rid of everybody in Parliament and start with a fresh start. And so Cromwell dissolves Parliament first, and then he establishes what is known as protectorate. And this was his temporary monarchy, might be the best way to put it, because he is the only one running the country during this time. There is no parliament. There is no cabinet. He is the one calling the shots, making the decisions.
How long was he reigning?
You know, I don't remember, and I don't have that in my notes as far as how long the protectorate lasted. But this went on for the remainder of Cromwell's life. He did put into place a constitution. So in the protectorate, he established a constitution that was agreed on by the people that also made sure that they were clear to understand that he was not the king. And that established the rule of England by a constitutional monarchy from this point. Now, Cromwell is going to die. When he is gone, now we have a void to fill. We need somebody to run the country, and so that's when we're going to bring back Charles' son, Charles II. Imagine that. So Charles II, he comes to England, and this period of English government is known as the Restoration. They are restoring the rightful heir to the throne of the King of England. So Charles II comes in, clearly knowing what happened to his father. Is he bitter? No. He comes in humbled and wanting to make sure that he cooperates with Parliament. He doesn't want to have the same fate as his father. So he comes in and Parliament says, we want you to be the next king, but there are conditions. We are going to make sure that things that happened to your father don't happen again. First thing is we're going to pass the Habeas Corpus Act.
Oh, wait. I've heard of this.
You probably have.
Oh.
HABEAS.
Really?
CORPUS.
I didn't have this.
Habeas corpus.
Not you, obviously. But where have I heard it before?
Probably somewhere in there.
Maybe.
Now, habeas corpus means that you cannot hold a prisoner without cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, you're right.
So this took away the king's power to say that because this person is sleeping in Parliament, then I'm going to throw you in jail. And I'm going to keep you in jail for a long, long time.
But he obviously didn't.
Or it prevented the king from not liking you and just throwing you into prison because he didn't like you. That was legal prior to habeas corpus. And Charles I took advantage of that, as well as many other kings did too. So this now prevents the king from doing that. He has to have a good reason. You have to have violated a law that can be proven in court in order to throw you into jail. By the way, the United States adopted this same thing. We have a habeas corpus act, and you cannot be retained in jail for more than 24 hours without them formally charging you with a crime. They can take you to jail for 23 and a half hours and then release you. But 24 hours is... No, it has to be on a different charge. So a lot of times this happens with public disturbances where either riots or fights break out. They will just start arresting people, throw them all in jail, and then if they don't have any evidence to keep them there, then they let them go after a period of time. So that way it gives the judicial system time to gather evidence and find out, do we need to keep this person longer, or if we don't have it, then we got to let them go. Charles II attempts to bring his family rule. His last name, or the family line, was Tudor, going all the way back to Henry. Yep. But while he does come back into power, his abilities are greatly reduced because he doesn't have as much power to do things, because now Parliament has put conditions on his power. They have said that if we're going to bring you back, put you on the throne, then you have to do a number of things in return for us. And so greatly reduced power with Charles II. Now, Charles II dies and does not have any children. So the throne goes to his brother. His brother is James II. We are going to see a lot of these in the family line where you're going to have seconds and thirds and so on because they keep the tradition of the family names. So James II was the brother of Charles II, also son of Charles I. And the only thing that he does is he has a son. And when he has a son, now people start freaking out because they're afraid of absolutism creeping into England. Because now they realize that there is a strong family line. There's a direct heir to the throne with the son of James II. So Parliament goes to James and they say, listen, there are people uneasy. This may not work out. It's not you, it's us. We're going in a different direction. We're downsizing. Your check's in the mail. I don't know. They're going to try to do this as nice as they possibly can, and they're going to notify James II that we no longer want you as our king. And James II obliges. Yeah, he saw what happened to his dad, remember? Yeah. He did not want to go down that path, and so he says, for the sake of my head, my family, I'm willing to step down and to leave my throne. This leads us to the Glorious Revolution. Anybody know why it's called glorious? It was glorious, but why?
Because they didn't have a king.
No, well, they're still going to have a king. They're just not going to have James II as their king. What do we associate with revolution?
Something new.
Change, something new. What else is generally associated with revolution?
Better. A new.
Well, yeah.
A new, like.
The American Revolution. French Revolution.
Just change it like there.
Guillotines and cake.
Okay, why do you associate it with guillotines and cake then?
I don't. I associate it with civil war.
Civil War. Okay, any of those things good?
Like an overthrowing of the government.
Is that good?
Of the government.
Typically, when you have an overthrow of the government, though, is there?
It was peaceful.
It was peaceful.
Isn't
Okay.
that what it was?
There was no bloodshed. With all those other revolutions, there's some sort of violence that goes on. There's chaos. There is people dying, guillotines. Okay.
What does that mean?
Guillotines and
It has to
Marie
be-
Antoinette.
said let them eat cake
Yeah.
because she didn't know that they were starving. And they didn't
Now,
have bread.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later. So in 1688, there's this glorious revolution. It is a bloodless revolution. There is no fighting, no civil war, no bloodshed in this change in power. So in this particular revolution, Parliament invites William of Orange to come take the throne. James willingly gives up the throne and he goes off for retirement in France. And he lives happily ever after in France with his head intact. Caleb? William of Orange. Yeah, from the Netherlands.
I thought that guy was gone.
Now, William's not going to rule alone. He is going to rule alongside Mary. This is a good Mary, yes.
This is
Bloody
Saint
Mary.
Mary, not Bloody Mary.
Is this Mary of Scots?
I'm trying to find him on this here. Yeah, I don't remember where she came from. I should know that. I should have that in my notes. Unfortunately, I don't.
Am I allowed to look it up?
Yeah, absolutely.
You said William of Orange?
Yep. And Mary. Now, part of the agreement in bringing them together is that they had to agree and they had to sign the Act of Settlement.
So he invited her.
Well, the Parliament kind of put them together and said, we want both of you to rule. Haley, what'd you find out?
It's Mary Queen of Scots, the eldest daughter of Charles I of England.
Thank you. Okay, I knew there was a connection. I couldn't remember where it was. So this is daughter of Charles. So they still kept the bloodline, but they brought in a new king. They put them together. They married for the sake of the throne. Very romantic, by the way. And they agree.
Is that how you asked your wife to marry you?
Yeah, I said, I can promise you all kinds of wonderful things as a wife of a teacher. No. Not at all. They said, there is an act of settlement that we want you to sign. Here's what the act of settlement said. The king's power is now limited. The king's power is now limited, and specifically limited by Parliament. And the king had to work alongside of Parliament with a constitution. So they drafted up, and this act of settlement is part of the Constitution. They drafted it together, and the king agreed, and he said, okay, I will work along with Parliament. I will abide by the constitutional laws. We will work together for the sake of the country. And this established England up until today as a constitutional monarchy. So this right here is like their American Revolution, Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, all wrapped up into one.
So why did they get that without too much bloodshed?
They got it because of the fact that James II was willing to step down peacefully, and the fact that they brought in his sister then, Mary Queen of Scots, and William of Orange, and they, in agreement to come to the throne, said, we want you to sign the Act of Settlement. they said, we'll do it.
So, because one guy didn't throw his event.
Well, what would have happened had James said no to this, they would have gone to another civil war. That was the alternative, is that would have been a civil war. And they saw what happened, that the Roundheads had more military power, they had more support, they would have won again. And then James II would have been in that same scene, marching down the same stairs, same result with his head. So, again, that's part of why we learn from history. Now, I know there's all kinds of people saying, well, hey, you never know. You could fight, you could win, you could do something else. Well, yeah, that's true. He maybe could have.
You could,
But
you won't.
he didn't want to go down that path.